My name is Craig Mitchell. I'm your host tonight. But before we get into all of that, I've been doing my thing, in this area for almost 30 years. And I'm really excited they asked me to be a part of this night, to be your host. Um, this Vermont PBS virtual events, Mr. Soul, um, blew me away. The movie is amazing. We hope you enjoyed the incredible film. Um, and it was made by Melissa Haslip. We've gathered a group of Vermont artists that we would like for you to meet. And so, with that said, first person is Crystal Brown, and she is the founder of the In Spirit Project, Becoming, the creator of Liquid Strength Training Module for Dance, an associate professor of dance at Middlebury College, and the CVO of Steps and Stages LLC. Brown is a native of Kinston, North Carolina. I hope I said that correctly, where she remembers accompanying her mother to NAACP and performing at Black Caucus rallies. This early exposure to social responsibility innately produced a strong desire in Brown to put her gifts to work for the greater good. Brown earned her BFA in dance and minor in business from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and her MFA in new media art and technology from Long Island University. Brown's evolution combines her creativity, educational gifts, and love for people into a dynamic coaching, facilitation, and consulting practice designed to create vision and sustain change. Crystal, hello, how are you?
Hey Craig, how are you? I'm excellent. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm surrounded by some amazing brothers, and I just am excited to get the conversation started. Hello, everybody who watched it. We hope tonight is as soulful for you as it was for us.
Amen. Thank you so much, Crystal. Moving on. Born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey, Will Casso Condry is a renowned visual artist, graffiti scholar, and educator. Casso studied fine art and illustration at the college as a first-generation college student. Again, first-generation college student. Love that. He furthered his education in the art of aerosol painting with the mentorship of legendary graffiti artist Daniel Pose 2 Hopkins. Casso refined his artistry in large-scale mural production under the tutelage of Dave McShane at Mural Arts Philadelphia. He has taught courses on the origins and politics of graffiti and street and the elements of hip-hop at Middlebury College. For over 20 years, Will's public art initiatives and civic engagement have helped vulnerable and fractured communities come together to creatively solve issues that affect their neighborhoods and everyday lives. Casso is a visionary. He is an Afrofuturistic artist, well known for his use of bold colors and layers. And additionally, his life's work centers on using mural arts as a vehicle for community building, activism, beautification, and healing. Casso is a co-creator of Juniper Creative Arts, a Black and Dominican family collective with a mission-driven practice of creating art that both involves and celebrates historically excluded communities. They use visual art and community murals to lift people up, lift up their voices, their images, and people that are often left in the margins. Their work and their vibe is inspired by their cultural and spiritual lineages. Urban art, hip-hop culture, the mystical, and the natural world. They believe in the power of the arts to heal, bring people together, build community, create dialogue, celebrate lives and stories of the African diaspora. Well, what's up, my man? How are you?
What's up, Craig? Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm looking forward to tonight. It's going to be fun. I'm around a bunch of cool people. I'm looking forward to it.
Was that okay? I was making sure your intro was all right.
You hit a home run. You good.
All right, good. Because I'm working hard, bro.
Hey, I'm here for it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. But thank you so much for being here. And it means a lot, seriously. And hopefully people appreciate the fact that you're here and the hard work you've done and the fact that you've taken the time out of your day to be here with us. Same thing with Crystal, as well as my third guest. Originally from Seattle, Washington, spoken word poet, MC, and teaching artist. Rajni Edens has been engaging diverse community audiences for over 27 years. He was the youngest member of the African American Writers Alliance at age 11. I'm going to say that again. He was the youngest member of the African American Writers Alliance at age 11. 11! And has been actively sharing with youth and community in Vermont since 2010. His latest work, The Names Are Mine, aims to confront white supremacy while emphasizing the need to affirm our mutual humanity. I love that. Hello, Rajni. Rajni, how are you?
I'm blessed to be here, Craig. Thank you so much for your exuberant introduction. I love your energy. And I guess I should give another shout out to Will, because the background, that's his art right there, From Steps to Resilience, the exhibit. So I'm just blessed to be here with some really dynamic, powerful, positive contributing forces to our community, and excited to discuss the film.
Amen. Before we get into the film, say that again about what's going on with Will in this artwork that's in the background.
Oh yeah, check it out. The cover of Their Names Are Mine is by Will Casa. That's from an exhibit he has called Steps to Resilience, where he selected different African-American subjects who had expressed that principle in their lives. And it is amazing. I definitely highly recommend you checking it out. And shout out to the brother for helping support putting my art together with The Perfect Marriage.
Amen. It's a great book. I bought it from you. I think we were talking about this before we started this event, but I think you remember I bought it from you at the Monkey House here in Winooski because I was like, bro, I need your book. And it's been on my coffee table ever since, and I've been reading it ever since. So I refer to it quite often. So thank you for the kind words and inspiration that are in there and the hard words that are in there, because there's a lot of stuff that people need to listen to that may not be easy. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about hard stuff, and that's good. And that's what the film was all about, talking about hard stuff. And I wonder if this show was on today, or if it had lasted for another 20 years, what would have happened? What would that have like? Who would have it inspired? You know, I'm inspired by Prince. I'm inspired by I saw Crystal like, yeah, Prince. Yeah, I'm a huge Prince fan. I'm inspired by hip hop, even though hip hop's not really my genre, but I'm inspired by it because it's subversive. It's supposed to be subversive. I'm inspired by Dave Chappelle because Dave Chappelle is supposed to be subversive, because that's what comedy is. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable and say things that people like the average person walking down the street wants to ask or wants to say, but they don't have the guts to say it. And they do that. I'm also inspired, as we move on to this question, to Crystal first. I'm inspired by Oprah Winfrey. And I watched the interview, and I don't care about who she interviewed. She could have been talking about a McDonald's hamburger or talking to that, but she did her thing. And I'm gonna do my best to be Oprah tonight. So with that said, Crystal, what inspires you? Who inspires you?
Well, it's interesting, Craig. I think, maybe you've been Googling my website or something, but I do have a lot of Oprah is my spirit, right? And Oprah, in my understanding, in my generation, is not about being a woman or even a Black woman. It's a metaphor. She has become a metaphor for how you translate your core value and your greatness into as many mediums as possible, right? So I'm a lot of things. And for some people, they find that confusing. But for me, I find it as a life built with gifts and talents that I don't want to leave unused, right? So as an artist, right, I'm sitting here with you guys in Jacob's Pillow right now, creating a new piece with my company called What We Ask of Flesh. I just finished my coaching practices book club. I've been in rehearsal all day with some amazing beings who trust me enough with their heart to show up with their bodies for my disposal, for my industry, for my artistry to come alive. And now I get to be with you. We don't all get to do that on a daily basis, right? Most people don't access the gifts that they have. They don't have time to let them be fertilized or practiced, or even the places that they're in, the environments don't lend to the conditioning of their growth, right? So when you talk about Oprah, like, she's my spirit animal. I love to be in all of my gifts simultaneously. I think it's what allows me to really function in my core value of love and not be distracted by the other voices and the other things that are happening in the world.
Amen. So I'm gonna hold you to that. Hold on one second. One thing you said that I really thought was beautiful. You are lots of things, as we all are. What are those things? Give me some more of Crystal. What else do you want to share with the world right now?
So the first thing I am, and I sign my emails this way, Craig, is mother, artist, educator, disciple, and coach. So I know that many people would like to really think about preferred pronouns and things of that nature, but I want you to read anything I write, whether it be an email, a blog, whatever. I want you to hear my voice with all the qualities of a mother, an artist, an educator, a disciple, a coach, someone who nurtures, someone who listens, someone who loves deeply even when it's not comfortable, someone who will take the time to break things down, to reconstruct the reality that we need to be in together. Right? Someone who so those are all the things that I am. And for some people that looks like this Crystal. For some people it looks like the sweaty Crystal in the studio. For some people it looks like Professor Brown. For some people it looks like the person that they use as their sounding board, as their coach. But all of those things have one core value and they have one vessel. And I'm happy to house them. I feel blessed to be able to know all those parts of myself so deeply.
Amen. I love the fact that you said you disciple. And disciple to me means that you're forever learning. You're willing to be open and listen and absorb. And that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. People needed to hear that. So we are forever changing. Rajni, how about you? What's your inspiration in life, or what led you to the work you're doing? Whatever you like to do or say about that.
I think, many times life, different challenges, experiences, just like looking at the experiences of our ancestors, learning a great deal from our family members, and thinking about how to share art in a meaningful way that can touch the hearts and minds of people, that can sensitize people and humanize people to learn from each other's stories. It seems like we're in such a critical place in history regarding that import. So I think that I try to draw inspiration from the people who came before, whose shoulders I stand upon. I think that's particularly why this documentary was so powerful to me, just seeing how it held a platform for so many different brilliant Black people and their varying multiplied disciplines, and seeing that you be yourself with nuance and share a diverse array of your gifts and have it held on a common platform. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be resurrected today. And I was really inspired to witness that. But yeah, definitely I try to draw inspiration from all the things that come in life. And art is a huge part of my art in terms of helping to find catharsis and holding space for other people to find healing and restoration and connection to their own stories. So definitely powerful.
Well, that's what Ellis did, right, Rajni? That was his whole platform, was I'm bringing these voices that are unheard to the masses. And I'm trying to bring them to the masses while also making sure that this show is Afrocentric. It is for Black people and for other people to get a peek into what Black culture is, and people that accept that culture into their lives, and to celebrate that. Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Nick Giovanni, and all these people that were on his show. I mean, it was amazing. So I think that's what you do as well, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for saying so. I mean, I'm definitely inspired, and that's a new spiritual mentor. Definitely, just to see how you can hold space for so many different people, and allow for us all to be welcome and to see ourselves through our own lens and our beauty and our brilliance. And I think that that's something that really would be a powerful offering today in terms of just helping to shape the mind early on of people and appreciate the vast array of ways to be Black and of African descent, and just how beautiful and valuable that is.
I mean, so before I get to Will, the one thing I did last year during Black History Month, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a follower. But I know that a big part of the Black experience is gospel music. And so I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that people that are of color are being uplifted and to share any way that I can our experience. Because I grew up in the church, and even though I said I don't want to be a part of it anymore, I grew up in it. And to put out gospel mixes for family members and friends and them saying, thank you so much for thinking of us, knowing where I stand, was beautiful and still is beautiful because they keep coming back to those mixes that are on my Mixcloud. Will, your inspiration in life as an artist, as a person, as a family member, as people making noise in the background, whatever it is, you tell me. What is it?
I think for me, it starts with family. It starts at home, and then it branches out from there. You know, ever since I was a kid, family and just intimate connections have been important in the work that I do. I paint large scale, but it starts with storytelling. And my parents, they were awesome storytellers. We didn't have much money. So we, you know, my father and my mother used to entertain us about just the crazy things they experienced in life, especially my father. My father was, you know, a Korean War veteran. He was a truck driver. You know, he was he was like a nomad for a while. You know, he did a lot of things. So, you know, when things were really desperate for us, that's how we stayed connected, with just telling these stories, always laughing, comedy. Like, I love comedy. Anybody who's really close to me knows how much I love to laugh, you know, and just being authentic and all that, you know, like the Black experience is more than just one story. Typically, when we hear our stories from people outside of our community, it's centered around trauma. Now, mind you, yes, we've been through a lot as a people, but we're still 360. We're not just, you know, 180, you know, it's diverse perspectives. And, you know, being a mural artist, painting different neighborhoods, different communities, different states and countries, you're hearing so many different stories. So you're getting an array of different perspectives, you know, especially when we're talking about the Black perspective. The one thing that as a muralist that I would consistently see is our narrative just from the place of trauma, period. And it seems like the only time we had value is when we were memorialized on a wall in a state of this somber or atmosphere around it. It's like, you know, we got to learn how to, you know, show ourselves in more of a healthy, hopeful state. So I made that an intention, especially when I moved out here, because, you know, Vermont's like 96% white, you know, so I'm very intentional about when I'm being commissioned to paint something and my family's being brought in to do community work, that it's centered around Blackness. That's one thing our clients know before they even talk to us. So it's never a debate. It's never a controversy when someone Black shows up on a wall full of joy, you know? And it's an education in that too. So we're consistently educating people about the Black perspective, but we've made it a point to where we're not going to exhaust ourselves trying to do something that Google is fully capable of. So
it's true. There's not a lot of pieces of pepper in the salt shaker up here.
Yeah,
you know.
Vermont, you know, one thing
really?
about Vermont, and I remember having this conversation with Crystal a while back. It's about its uncharted territory when it comes to what really can be do with public art. You know, whether it's performative, whether it's sculpture, whether it's two-dimensional murals, it doesn't matter. Like it's pretty wide open out here. You just got to be imaginative, you know? Right. So it's not convenient in the sense of coming up in a city where if I wanted to paint a wall, you know, I could just walk down the street. It's not that convenient here, you know? But the thing about being able to tell a story well, you can relate to a wide array of people, right? But I'm just very intentional about telling the Black story from a Black perspective, you know. So right. That's my no matter what I'm doing, whether it's a mural, whether it's an album cover, whether it's a book cover, whether it's a canvas, it's centered on Blackness.
Well, and that was a big part of this film, and what that show was.
Yeah.
You know, I remember conversations with my family members about Martin Luther King, for example. For them, it was like, we wish he had shut up because we got it good now. We're no longer second-class citizens. We're a little bit high. No. There's still work to be done. And with that said, also, one thing you said is that the Black experience is different for different people. Like when people say the Black vote, yes, there are huge Black communities, and there are communities that are more homogeneous. But at the same time, there are people that are on the fringes. They're also of color. They're also Black that may think differently, and they may have a different way of looking at the world. For example, and I'm going to keep with you, Will, in the film, I thought it was really interesting watching the conversation between Farrakhan and Ellis. That was tough. What do you think about that?
I mean, you know, the cool thing about that show, Soul, is that, you know, it really, like when he interviewed Farrakhan, it's crazy because what Farrakhan was talking about is really no different than what happened today. And this is like, what, 50 years ago now, almost. So that was the bittersweet part about it all. It was like, man, this is awesome historical record, but what's really changed? You know, some things have gotten better. Yes, some things even compared to then, you know, it's been a 50-year span, but we're still talking about the same issues from a place of still trying to figure out how to get to that place of liberation that show eloquently put together, you know. But I think it starts with the arts. I think the responsibility lies on the artists. We're the ones who document this time, you know, in our chosen medium or mediums. We're the documentaries of what is current, you know. So 20, 50 years from now, they'll be looking at the work that we're doing as a historical record on trying to hopefully maintain the liberation that we're talking about seeking at this moment. So it's an important role that we have. And the documentation of that show, again, I didn't know of that show until I was reached out about this. So I had to do my research, and we found all the episodes from, I think it was 5 seasons on Amazon Prime. So in taking that in, it was like, wow, this is awesome. I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. So even still, I probably wouldn't have had access to it. It was before my time. I was born 4 years after the show ended. So, but I didn't know of it. So for me, it was like, damn, what if I knew about this show back then? You know, we grew up on Soul Train and things of that nature. Soul Train was awesome, but it definitely wasn't as variety filled as this show. So
it's true. I agree. I was surprised by it too. I was shocked by it in a good way. And I wish that was around today and someone had the guts to do what this man did. Crystal, I'm going to ask the same question to you. Here was this openly gay man talking to Louis Farrakhan. How did that conversation make you feel?
Well, I think you asked a question earlier, Craig, about what would happen if this show were on today.
Yes.
The answer to the question is it would promote a deeper dialogue about what is really happening inside of what we call Blackness, right? There is a humanity that's happening that can be seen from various perspectives. And the way that Ellis is talking to artists and religious leaders is about practice, right? It's a practice to ask questions rather than to make declarative statements or value judgments. It's a practice to establish value and create an audience and a culture around it that lifts it up. It's a practice to say you want a relationship with God and do it every day. It's a practice to say you want to be a dancer or an artist and find the fundamentals to do that creates something beautiful, right? Ellis was formulating this idea that practice was a part of the vision, right? When we think about these people that we call sometimes heroes, sometimes martyrs of movements of the evolution of Blackness, we're constantly talking about what they could see that we haven't gotten to yet. And we're still having that conversation. So what about us as artists, us as Black people, us as cultural ethnographers and historians and creators is not being told that other people can find their humanity in to value and to uplift?
Crystal, I'm gonna stay with you for a second. Do you think he was conscious of the fact that he was doing that at the time, or was he just doing what felt right to his soul? And then this is a strictly opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think we were just tackling this question yesterday from a movement perspective, but we're born all knowing that we're here to do something, right? And I think when we get to that, sometimes it is so powerful that we shy away from it. It asks too much of us. And I think what we see in Ellis is a yes, not a please, not a may I, not a maybe, not a at some point, but just a very clear yes. And that yes activated all of these other people to be magnetized to him for him to create a platform to show the world.
You know, I'm smiling. I can't stop smiling because that one line you just said, it's resonated with me and it vibrated with me. We are all here. We are born here to do something. All of us. We're all born to do something. And I appreciate that so much. No matter what it is that you're doing, stick with it, focus on it, and make it your task. Even if you don't realize it, whatever it is that I'm just doing this because I'm doing it. No, there's another purpose.
I mean, I just last thing, like in that vein, Greg, like most people think that I was the little kid who pulled on my mom's arm and was like, "Can I go to ballet class?" I got dropped off at the wrong place in a carpool. Like I was supposed to go to a piano lesson and my best friend's mom dropped me off at the wrong place. Like it was not because that's what was growing in me. It was what started as something to do and it turned into a way to learn people and the world and a lifestyle that has continued to show me the value of rehearsal.
Amen. Thank you so much, Crystal. Rajni, I want to give you a chance to answer that question if you like, but I have a question in the chat that I want to present to you, if you're cool with that. This is from Christy in Burlington. What do you most want white Vermonters to know about your experience as Black artists here in Vermont?
Most want white Vermonters to know.
So what do you most want white Vermonters to know about your experience here as a Black artist here in Vermont?
I'd say that we're here. You know, you can't put us in one blanket, one category. We're as diverse as humanity and the universe is itself. So just that we're present and don't be afraid to reach out and relate and connect and engage and collaborate and hold space to learn and grow in tandem, because I think that's what life's about. You know, speaking of the film too, I think that's a crucial lesson space, you know, a crucial schoolhouse that Ellis offered us in terms of exemplifying how you hold space in a courageous and compassionate way for a multiplicity of different people, different backgrounds, different stories, different ways of showing up and moving through the world. I think having compassion and a sincere curiosity and interest to understand and learn and grow and hold space and say, I love you, brother, even if you differ from me. I love you, sister, no matter how you show up. This is about us. This is an opportunity. Something he said stuck out to me. It's like I hadn't seen myself. So I wanted to see myself. So you think about those children, maybe some of us were them, who didn't see ourselves in a multiplicity of ways, and how divine and profound an offering that is. Even Questlove spoke of it. Like, had this show continued 20 years, what would have been the outcome? Would have touched so many people's hearts and minds in dynamic ways that showed a vast array of different expressions of who and how you can be. And I think that's what is a vital offering for all people.
I agree. I remember watching the very first episode of Saturday Night Live, and I could be wrong because that was a long time ago. I was, 5. I'm admitting how old I am, but it's all right. But it was Richard Pryor, and I believe Gil Scott-Heron was the guest, and that was subversive. And to have this white dude, this Jewish white dude that ran the show, to be like, yo, I'm giving some space to Black people on national television. It's after hours, but I'm giving Richard Pryor, one of the most quote unquote offensive speakers for us. And I don't call him a comedian because he's not. He was a speaker. Just like Paul Mooney is not a comedian. He's a speaker. Dave Chappelle is not a comedian. He's a speaker, and he's a champion of change. To have what you do and what Crystal does and what Will does in this state is beautiful and wonderful. And I'm sure I could speak for lots of folks. Thank you for what you do. I'm going to continue on with Rajni for a second, because I want to jump into the pandemic for a second, because I don't want to belay the movie for too long. And I have a couple more questions before we get out of here. The pandemic, how you feeling? I'm going to give you a multi-tiered question. 1, vaccine, yes, no, why not? 2, how has your creative process changed during this time?
Okay.
I know it's heavy. I'm sorry. There's a couple things in there, but go, I'll let you roll.
No, I think as far as creative process, it's definitely given a lot of time to go inside and to kind of meditate and create and explore your own inner terrain. And that seems like a super powerful moment and purposeful application of this time. I feel blessed to have opportunities to still engage my art and share. And surreally enough, like the pandemic actually expanded engagements for me, because the work that we're speaking about in terms of the need to confront white supremacy and affirm common humanity in meaningful ways. I think the convergence of the pandemic alongside the uprisings in response to so many killings of our people really brought home in a powerful, impactful way the necessity for voices that can speak to this with candor and integrity. So I feel like this is the moment we've been born for. You know, we're here to present our art and our purpose, like Crystal spoke eloquently. We have these passions, these urges, not for no reason. She might have got dropped off, thought it was an accident. Clearly was not. Well, not no accidents, that's sheer alignment. So I would say, yeah, I'm thankful for this time. I'm sorrowful for the people who are suffering. I'm thankful that my family is safe. I feel blessed to be able to offer something that people feel is useful and valuable and affirmed by, and for holding space in a meaningful way for them to see their own light and to express it amongst each other, to continue that legacy of healing and restoration and creative imagination and opening doorways through artistry. As far as the vaccine, I have kind of a still on the fence thoughtfulness about it, just because I know the history of how Black people have been mistreated by medical practitioners. You know, the father of gynecology was experimenter on enslaved Black women. There's a whole history of just really kind of grotesque stories about how people are harmed by the medical practitioners. So I'm still kind of watchful. I still am really about boosting the immune system and protection and kind of keeping my elders out of the way who are sensitive. So I try to focus on proactive means to keep my health well, to be active in my own movements, to keep my body movement. I have a 9-year-old daughter, she keeps me active.
Right. So if I can interrupt, so you're like vitamins and probiotics and making sure my body's good. Because if we think of Tuskegee.
Right. Yeah, and I don't
polio
I'm not trying to
vaccines,
judge anybody for what their choices are, because I know like people have different perceptions on it, but that's just me personal. That's our household has kind of had our own kind of hardships with medicinal practitioners, so we have some of that trauma story too.
Yes, I was doing a conversation. I had an interview with Conflict the other day, and I asked that same question about vaccine, no vaccine, why not? And Conflict was like, when Flint gets clean water, I'll get the vaccine. Until then, I'm good, son. So I'm going to switch this up a little bit, and I'm going to pose this question to Will, because it's coming through the chat here. And if you want to jump on that other question, you can at the end of this part. But I want to make sure we get to Scott from Jericho. This show is more than 50 years old now, and he's curious about what do you think has changed and what remains the same for Black Americans, especially Black artists. Will, please.
What has changed and what remains the same? Well, I think the violence and all of the political climate that show was filmed in, we're kind of still in that. I think the thing that's changed, I just think it's the outlets of which we have. Now we have social media. So if you're intentional, you can find outlets for Black creativity, but you still don't have that. You don't have a broadcast like soul anymore. Like that's pretty much non-existent. I mean, for someone, I'm 43 years old. So yes, soul was before my time, but I didn't know of it till like a month ago. I think that goes about how information is shared, because typically from mass media, the only story they typically focus on is the trauma narrative, about how resilient. Yes, we're resilient people. We're here today as a testament to our ancestors, how resilient we are, right? But at the same time, the artistry, the beauty, and all the things that we create gets overshadowed just by that, but it takes, but as Black artists, we can tell you exactly how we feel, how we look at the world. We just need the outlets to do it, Black centered outlets, not led by just white media, so we need to really figure out how to make that happen, you know, starting where we at, you know, right here in Vermont, the Black community in Vermont. That's the one thing about, you know, the one thing I used to hear before I moved here is like, ain't no Black people in Vermont, which is not the case. It's just that we're spread out, right? But when we find Black people, I make this joke with Raji, it's like when you, like the movie The Highlander, when you come across another immortal, you like get the scent, that feeling like, oh, wait a minute, I'm around somebody else Black that gets me. That I ain't got to overly explain myself. You know, I ain't got to educate to death, you know? It's like you just get it, you know? So it feels good when you get that kind of community. And building an infrastructure to help tell our stories authentically from us, by us, that's the one thing I want to see here, you know? And yeah, we can look at other places that's doing cool things, but the one thing that you never hear about Vermont is about the Black experience in this state. But now with the climate that we're living in and that more creatives of color are starting to come together, I think it's something that can happen sooner than later. So I would love to see that change. You know, I used to tell people when, you know, my goals, the things I'm doing now is always the things I said I wanted to do when I got here, right? I wanted to make Vermont a more colorful place in more ways than one, you know? So I'm doing that. I'm doing it with my family. I'm blessed beyond measure. I'm super grateful for every opportunity that comes my way. But I will always make sure I tell a 360 version of who we are, not just a single one.
Amen. And I love that part of the movie, Will, where they were saying no matter what us people of color have been through, we still dance, we still paint, we still sing, we still celebrate, no matter what. We are resilient. And that is what comes through for me from what I got from the film. I'm not sure if you got the same thing.
You know, art is life. Where there's art, there's life. Where there's art, there's some type of progression, right? So where I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, right? I grew up in one of the poorest wards in the city, North Fork, right? So growing up, there wasn't too many outlets as far as creativity. You know, there wasn't too many outlets. It wasn't something like my parents were like, oh, if you're going to be an artist, great. And we're going to try to help you be an artist. It was just like, okay, if this is what you're into, this is great because I know you're not in the street selling dope. I know you ain't in the streets doing wild stuff. So we're just going to give you everything that we can to make sure that, you know, you end up somebody, not another statistic. So art for me was always a way of in my early days, is a way of escaping, you know, the reality of where I grew up. You know, what's the Notorious B.I.G. quote? You either slang crack rock or got a wicked jump shot. Like those were the options, you know, growing up in the mid 80s, you know, crack epidemic, everything around you, the infrastructure falling apart. But as a little kid, you don't know the root of it, like how it started. You think that's just the world, right? But the arts is what got me out of that. You know, it was about 10 years ago, I was in London, right? And I remember waking up, I thought I was late for the event I was there to perform, to paint at. So I remember waking up, you know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm running late. And I look at the clock and it's like, you know, 4:45 a.m. and the sun is like beaming through my window. I was like, and I just slowed down because I thought I was a few hours late, but I was, you know, the event didn't start for another few hours. And I just remember looking out the window. I was like, wow, man, I'm a kid from Trenton, New Jersey. I'm painting my way to London. You know what I'm saying? Like that art provided me that option. You know, the support from home gave me the freedom to create, you know? So being drawn to this work, doing community activism, it was kind of in the same way, it was like, it was a way of accident. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to paint murals, do graffiti, maybe be in some magazines. It was, you know, it was pretty commercial, my outlook. But once I started seeing how it affected people and getting kids involved primarily, I was like, okay, you know what, man, I need to change my way of thinking because what I'm doing is more powerful than I even realized. So I didn't even know the power of public art and using that as a vehicle to tell our stories and, you know, as a form of activism, things of that nature. So the work is serious, it's deep rooted, you know, and the more I grow, the more I learn, the more I educate myself, the more profound the paintings and the more profound the stories are, you know, because again, it keeps me connected to everything that's going on outside of my home. So yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And we're all getting close to the end, so I want to, you know, make sure that I get this one last question in. And I love the fact that we're all talking about we're all learning and we're all growing. I mean, I'm learning. I'm a child still. I'll be 50 next month, but I'm still a child. I'm still learning how to navigate myself and navigate through this world as a person of color. You know, where I grew up in a town where I wasn't Black enough. I didn't talk Black enough for the people in my neighborhood. I didn't look Black enough. And I came here, all of a sudden I was Black man. And I had to be the voice of Black America. No, man. Will could be the voice of Black America, or Chris could be, or Raji could be. But also it depends on the neighborhood you're in and where they come from and the story that you want to hear. Because I can give you the story you want to hear, because my story is probably really the story you want to hear. But Will's story is probably the tougher story. And maybe Crystal's even tougher than that. And maybe Rosny's even tougher than that you don't want to hear. And those stories are where the toughness comes in. And those are the conversations we need to have. And that's what we started tonight. And so thank you so much for being a part of this before I get to this last question. So the reason why I moved to Vermont, I got a scholarship to go to St. Michael's College. And they were looking for people who were, smart kids of color from inner cities. And they paid for me to come here and go to school at St. Michael's College as a student of color. And this place was crazy for me initially because, again, like I said, I had to be the voice of Black America, also, or at least my Black community, which that's not who I am, because nobody can speak for everybody. They can speak to and speak, tell the general story, but everyone is an individual. But one of the things I did when I got here, I saw this kid on Church Street with dreadlocks. And I walked up to him and asked him how he got his head like that. And he was like, what? And he got all offended. And it was a white dude because I'd never seen dreadlocks up close. Growing up in Michigan, no one wanted to be the first person to do anything different. So I bring it up only to say that everyone's experience is different than the next person. So you cannot, compartmentalize it all. At the same time, you can also say there is still this thing that makes us all inherently Black. And that is beautiful. At least I hope so. So with that said, what brought you to Vermont, Crystal?
Well, I was invited to Vermont to teach by a friend. Oh, actually, I take that back. What brought me to Vermont permanently was that invitation. But the first time I came to Vermont was with love. I was in a very deep relationship with a man who I love very much, and we came to Vermont because his band was playing. It was the first time I'd ever come to Vermont.
Okay.
What was interesting about what you're actually relaying, Craig, is that at that time, my ex-fiance, he was in a band called Two Bob Crew. If you know anything about the word Two Bob, it means foreigner on the continent in Western Africa, right? And so it was me and this kind of all-white Two Bob band that played Afro-pop music, and people assumed I was their teacher, right? And I was like, no, I've actually never been to Africa. I just love this dude. I don't really know what's happening, right? And so the assumption behind that was really clear. When I moved to Vermont, someone said to me, hey, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from the South. And they immediately said South Africa, right? And so what I want to just be clear about is that—
Wait, whoa. What? They said what?
Well, the accent, people don't really understand accents. But the thing that I want to really illuminate about that is that it's really the answer to the last two questions, is that when you haven't seen something, when the experience has not been a part of your life, then you don't know how to react to it, right? And that's okay. Like, that's human nature, right? And so what we really need to be clear about in Vermont is that Blackness in Vermont has never existed in its original construct. And I don't mean continental African construct. I mean Blackness as we've defined it in America. And it's never been seen as a holistic, integral part of the landscape. And so when people want to know how to relate to Black art, or what brought you here, or how do we find community, or are there Black people in Vermont, it becomes this real question of what is the new cultural definition of Vermont Blackness, right? And that's a whole other conversation, right? That I think myself, Rajni, Will, other artists of color, whether they deem themselves as Black or not, are having in their work in relation to their environment, which happens to be Vermont. Right? So I think the larger question is, how do we contextualize Blackness? And to contextualize something, we actually have to know what it is first.
Amen. I'm sorry. I can't stop smiling because you've just given me all kinds of life and all kinds of juice right there. Thank you so much for sharing that, because we're not homogeneous. We're all different people and we're all beautiful and wonderful. But everyone's got a different story and a different path they have to take. But there is the place we all have to come back to at some point to check in and then get back to what you do. One more thing you'd like to share before we get out of here, Crystal, before I move on to Will.
I just think the last thing that I'll share is we have work to do, but work is not scary. Work is just work. We are all creative beings. You don't get a choice of whether you're creating your life or not. You create every day. You just might not like the result. So if we're getting a little bit more passionate and a little bit more clear about what we're creating as individuals, then we might start to recognize this new holistic fabric of the world we live in. So that's our steps and stages. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so very much. It's very nice to have a conversation with you tonight. And I look forward to more. And hopefully the PBS or in any other situations we can sit and talk and learn from each other. Because I've learned a lot from you, especially tonight.
Thank you.
As well as Will, Ashley. So thank you. Will, please.
So what brought me
and the question again was, so what brought you to Vermont and why?
Well, originally I came out here the first time in the spring of 2012. My niece was a sophomore at the time. Her name is Sade Williams. She was a sophomore at Middlebury College. And she invited me up to do a talk about using art as a form of activism. And I had never even heard of Middlebury College, so my work was grassroots activism, doing murals in the community, all the stuff I'm doing now, but in the urban area. So I came out here, did my talk, and that's where I met my now wife, Jennifer. I met her while I was painting live at 51 Main in Middlebury for her Verbal Onslaught event. So, we started a relationship as far as just like being friends, and a year later, 2013, I came back out here to paint live at an event of a friend of mine who's a co-founder of Upper Pass Beer Company. At the time, he was just starting to plant the seeds for that. So fast forward to 2016, Jennifer and our relationship start to take on another level. We come back into communication, and it just kind of never stopped. So I would come out here to visit her. And then, that's when at a time where I was, really looking for a way out of Jersey as far as like to grow. I kind of hit a ceiling creatively. I was, my work was at that time, it still is very political, doing political public art. And I just wanted a place where I can grow and do more community centered work. And Jennifer was telling me like, oh, you should come out to Vermont. And I was like, well, what I want to do in Vermont full time, I'm a big Black dude with a very Black aesthetic. You want me to come to the whitest state in the country to do art? I didn't know how I would fit in here. I really didn't. So around that time, I got tapped to do a TEDx talk at Middlebury College, and it was a huge hit. And I think that's what started really getting people open to like the type of work that I was doing. And then January of 2017, I was in the middle of I started a residency at the Anderson Freeman Resource Center at Middlebury College, the same center that my wife was overseeing. And that went on for the entire semester. We, did murals, student-led murals all throughout the center. And then next thing I started teaching J-term. And then by that point, I knew Vermont was home. Within a few months after being here, it's like, yeah, this feels good. It definitely wasn't what I expected for my life at that time. I was doing a lot of traveling, bopping back and forth, Philly, LA, Jersey. I was jumping around a lot, really just looking for somewhere that felt comfortable enough to stabilize myself in, and I had no idea that it'd be Vermont. And ever since 2018, my wife and I have been doing this work together. Over the pandemic, we've been doing it full time. So everything started to really change for us just as far as our family structure and employment and such, where it was like, okay, you know what? This is the work that we're called to do. This is what feels good. This is what, we get excited to wake up every morning and tackle, whether it's a super challenge, whether we're exhausted. This is the type of exhausted that I'd rather be exhausted from making too much art than doing anything else, So, but, and just the openness, like, of the space, like, there's a lot of space in Vermont. There's a lot of trees, there's a lot of nature, and it's good. It feels good. I slowed down in the sense where I don't try to rush everything anymore. Prior to moving to Vermont, most of my work centered around graffiti and street art, and it's always done in a relatively quick fashion. So I had to take a step back and really develop a studio practice, something I just never gave myself time to do. Now I have a studio and also do murals, but now I have a studio practice where I have to be intentional on going and creating pieces. And it could, having a studio, being a studio could be intimidating work because it's just myself and the canvas. It's not a public, it's not a lot of people. So I didn't realize how adapted to just having people around me I had become. So I had to just kind of adapt to a whole new way of just thinking. And my work just became even more rich, since I started using mediums like oil and acrylic, if those mediums force you to work at a slower pace as opposed to using something like spray paint, so ideas and different things that I've never had made time for in Jersey, I make time for here. Most of the work that I'm doing now, as far as my personal work, is a series of illustrations that I started during the pandemic, because as far as traditional art mediums, illustration is my first love. That's the foundation of everything. So I just got back to that, and pen and ink work is a very tedious, patient process. So you can have all the idea of how fast you want to get done sometimes, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to respect the medium, whatever it is, and adjust to that medium, not have the medium adjust to you. So it's definitely giving me the space to explore new ideas, more futuristic ideas, and taking all the experiences, all the things that I've done now, and literally illustrating that. So yeah, it feels good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, my man. And it sounds like Vermont's been good for you.
Yeah, I say all the time, Vermont's a beautiful state. Black people love it for the same reasons white folks do. It's beautiful here.
No, Crystal jumping in. She's saying something. Turn your mic on, girl.
No, I'm just joking. I don't ski.
No, I don't do that either. But I'm talking about just as far as the fresh air. Just being in nature, getting back to that, coming up in the city, it's places like this is like I tried to stay away from as far as I could. But at the time, I think if I came here, if I was much younger, it would have been different. I was already, I was in my late 30s when I moved here. So I had already kind of done a lot of stuff in the world and been in different places. And I just wanted somewhere where I can have a fresh start and approach it from a clear mind. Meeting my wife out here and all the people that I've met out here, I don't take any of that for granted, so it didn't make sense to me then because it wasn't a part of the plan as an artist. Artists typically are drawn to bigger cities and things of that nature, but I just got tired of being on that rat race, the competitiveness being in the city and trying to adapt to those cultures, they run you ragged. So, and I was just being ran ragged. I was like, when I first came here, I had no gray hair, right? So when I came back in 2016, Jennifer was like, "Wow, you've lived," because I was like, "Cool, great."
So you're like the president at the beginning of his term, and all of a sudden, I'm
the grassroots arts nonprofit doing hella prolific work in a city that is one of the most corrupt in the country when it comes to certain aspects of it. And I was shining a light on all that, so I was at my wit's end. I know what it feels like to have your phone tapped and to also be looked at by people who can take your freedom away. Because the work that we were doing, we were shining a spotlight on some really intense stuff. And that was taking a toll on me. So when I would come out here, it was almost as a recharge that I didn't even so much as appreciate because I was so committed to that work. But when I found the community out here that I started to align myself with, I realized wait, people are out here doing the same work. It's just a different environment and also a different consciousness, a different perspective. So when I would make trips back to my hometown, I would share these stories. People were like, what are you talking about? You've changed it so much. It's been almost 5 years since I've been here. And I felt I can see my own growth. I can see my family's growth, and my work has evolved in more than just, murals. It's all kind of, I'll do digital illustration, fine art, all kinds of things. It's so many opportunities that I found for my work out here because I do a diverse body. It's not, just one style. And yeah, so is Vermont going to be forever? I mean, we'll see. But for now, it's great. And we're building up something lovely here. and something that is generational. You know, that's what we talk about here, building generational wealth. And what does that look like? And what practices need to be in place to build that, you know? So yeah, so Vermont's been good to me.
Amen. Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close that with Rajni. I'll say goodnight to everybody else in a second. But Rajni, what brought you to Vermont? Why are you still here? And what still gives you inspiration to stay here?
Oh man, well, initially I came here for family. You know, my mother's good friend, my godmother, was ill, so I came with her to hold space for their family. I remember my first day in town, I got off the airport and we like turned the corner and there was a baggage claim right there. I was like, oh my God, this baggage claim is right there. It's like a 7-Eleven. It's like, where are we at right now? So my man took me downtown. We walked down from I think Pearl Street to Main Street. It's like, that's downtown. I was like, oh, my heart started. I probably felt like the inverse of what somebody from a small town would feel when they go to New York. Like, this is huge. I was like, this is really small. Because all downtown looked like one part of Pioneer Square in Seattle. I was like, oh, that's my reference point. So I kind of got a brief rundown that was not the most positive from my cousin. He was like, you're not going to like it. It's not fun. It's mad white people. It's racist. I was like, whoa, I just got here. This is day one. I got to navigate and learn how to, see it through my own eyes. But I took what he said with a grain of salt. And I just told myself, everywhere I go, I'm going to open another doorway. Right. Mm-hmm. So I saw, for the most part, when I go to spaces, open mics or different events, I'd be the only brother there. But I was like, let me keep showing up. And every time I'll find another opportunity to present and engage. And I feel like that was a useful mantra because it continued to work to open doors for me. I experienced a lot of different microaggressions and different challenging things racially. Unfortunately for me, I had already had a background in using my art as a cathartic kind of fulcrum for that pressure. And now, I mean, I have a book out of it that I use to educate, empower, and hold space for people to engage and learn about deconstructing of that same experience and hopefully grow from it. So I feel like all those things in life that challenge you when you take yourself to a new environment where you don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be, but you leave, put your best foot forward, you hold space for willingness to learn and grow and to see, because you never really know the principles you hold until you go to different spaces and you're challenged again in a new environment. So I learned, oh yeah, in Seattle, I'm this person, and in Vermont, I'm still this person. And so it rooted me in a centering way. Also having a lot of time with the youth, because those are some of my first jobs. I've always worked with children. My mother was a foster parent, over 70 children. She started the first Black Writers Group, the African American Writers Alliance. I was the only child member at age 11. So children are a huge part of my own personal development as a big brother in our own household. And I've always worked with youth since a child. So just being able to encounter the community that way first through the K through 5th graders and then the 6th through 12th graders and seeing them grow up like 10 years later now, the 5-year-olds that we were with now 15, right? The 11-year-olds are now grown. So you see all of this community connection. So I think I'm really thankful for all those relationships that I've been able to succor and to cultivate with this community, to learn that there's a specific edge or experience or gift that I have just in being able to move through the world and share my story in a meaningful way that can hopefully inspire and empower others to do the same. And I feel like that's an obligation or a vital responsibility and charge for artists to hold up each other's light and to empower others to do so.
Amen. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of this discussion after watching that amazing film and discussing this film and just discussing life as people of color here in Vermont. And I thank you all so much. This conversation will be saved on the Vermont PBS YouTube page. And thank you to Vermont PBS for hosting this, which is really important. And thank you to them for their willingness to put themselves out there in this way. And especially to Christy as well, and Scott for their questions. Rajni Edens, thank you. Will Castle-Condry, thank you. And Crystal Brown, thank you so much. All love to all of you. Everyone watching Vermont PBS, I'm Craig Mitchell. Much love to you. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Peace. Good night.